Well, really nice to be here this morning. It is early. I'm glad I'm not the only one who struggles with early mornings. I'm really not a morning person, but I thought for this, I'll do it. So, yeah, really excited to be here. And I'm not really going to talk about my work in a sense. Some of you might have read what I do, etc. And I'm not really going to talk about that. You might be like, oh, but I came to hear about video games. You're not really going to hear about video games. You might hear about some movies and a little bit of time travel, maybe a little bit of space. And you're like, what is this talk? But yeah, I thought I would chat just a little bit more about cycles and what that means to me and how that then impacts the work I do and really everything, everything I do. And so, cycles. We all love cycles, actually, or maybe we love to hate cycles. And we're going to look at some examples, because if you think I don't really have cycles in my life or whatever, you do. And here's some of them. Some of the things that we love. Has anyone ever seen this show, This Is Us? Yeah. Two people. These are my people. It makes sense you're sitting next to each other. Yeah. So This Is Us is this beautiful family drama. It spans generations of a family, and you go with these characters as they grow up, and then they fall in love, and then they build a family, and then they lose their loved ones. And then the next generation takes over, and it's this beautiful cycle, and we're really invested in it. And if that doesn't resonate, maybe this kind of story does resonate. Gladiator, actually both of them. Has anyone seen the old one? The better one? Anyone seen the new one? Yeah, exactly. And both of them follow the same kind of story. It's the classic kind of hero's journey, right? So we have the hero, and unfortunately the hero is forced to leave home. He undergoes some trials, and then he comes back, and then he reclaims his home. And actually, the old movie leaves off, and then the new one starts with a new cycle, because that's actually his son, and the whole thing starts all over again. Cycle. And there are lots of classic hero's journeys that kind of go through this cycle, right? You have Odysseus. He leaves Ithaca, and he has to go through a myriad of different obstacles, and he comes back and reclaims his home. Think Star Wars, of course, Luke Skywalker ends up meeting his father. The Lion King, right? Simba, exiled, has to go through stuff, comes back, reclaims the throne. And there's something about going back to where we started. And for me, it's a bit less dramatic, and there's maybe a little less sword play, fewer lightsabers, and killing family members and stuff, but we all have our own cycles. And maybe some of these resonate with you more because they're slightly less fantastical. So, this is me when I was little, and my brother, my older brother. You're like, which one? I'm the one in the little pink hat, and then that's my brother. And I was born in Germany, in Europe. But then we left and moved to Canada when I was still a child, and I grew up in Canada, so I learned to do things like this, canoeing and portaging and all that good stuff. And I built a career. I became a journalist, did lots of stuff, also in front of the camera. And then at some point, my brother moved back to Germany, and then I moved back to Germany. And we ended up back kind of where we started. And then I also ended up back in front of the camera, but just for a totally different thing. Another cycle. So when I was living in London, I worked at a company called Space Ape Games. They make mobile games. And I left that company, and I started my own business called Games for Good. And then that business led me to consult with a company called Supercell, and then I ended up joining Supercell more recently, and then Supercell ended up acquiring Space Ape. So that's where we started. Cycle. And then here's another cycle, a shorter one, right? This is just a year's cycle. So last year, around this time, actually a few months before this time, but I was offered to join the company Supercell. And for various reasons, I ended up turning it down. And then a year later, almost exactly, I ended up saying yes. And we're going to get back to that. But that's the thing about cycles, right? Like, we usually pay a lot of attention to everything that's happening on the outside. Like, if the seasons change, then our clothes change, maybe our mood changes, maybe anyone finished winter is a bit like, oh, I see like more frowny faces than I probably would find in the summer, right? But yeah, all these outside things start to affect us, or our jobs change, or maybe our location changes, or maybe our relationship status changes. All these things kind of whirling around all about us, and sometimes it feels like we're caught in these cycles, and there's kind of an immense amount of pressure that bears down on us because of all these cycles, and it feels like we're kind of being crushed by the cycles, but then also kind of spun around, and we lose our footing, and it's kind of a big mess. And does anyone ever feel like they're dealing with the same problems like over and over and over? And it's like, oh, there's that issue again. I thought we did this. They're going back around again, and it feels like you're doing it again, again, again. Well, that's because there's another kind of cycle. And it's actually a little bit like what Mika was saying before. There's this part on the inside. And remember this cycle that we had, my no turning into a yes. And it's kind of interesting, well, what happened there? Because actually the outside didn't change that much. It's not like Supercell got a lot better or my own business got a lot worse. So something must have been happening on the inside of me. And that's because we're actually at the center. There's a cycle inside all of us. And those cycles on the outside, they're actually in service to the cycle on the inside. And so when I was trying to make this decision, a year ago, there was a lot of indecision, right? I was like future tripping on all the possible consequences of my actions. Like, if I go this route, what will happen? If I go this route, what will happen? I was trying to understand where it would lead. I asked everybody, right? First you start with like your family, your friends for advice, your close people, and then you're like, ChatGPT, what do you think I should do? You know, I prayed, I asked, like, I did everything. I was like, somebody find me the answer, I can't decide. And then at some point it was like, okay, maybe this just isn't the right thing. And both sides were kind of like, maybe this is just a no. And I found out later it was actually a not yet, but it was still a no. So went through this horrible torture internally. I'm sure some people have been through these similar things. And then I left it. And I focused on other things, and I thought I had moved on. Yay, okay, we made the decision, kind of, and we've left it. Then, and it was maybe like 3 months before the anniversary of that decision, where this like nudge started to come back, and I was like, hey, remember that decision you made? Are you sure about that? And this uncertainty started to creep back in. Are you sure you made the right decision? But maybe we should look at this again. And I was like, oh, but we did this, and it was so hard, but we did it. And then I thought, okay, well, we're back here, but this time I'll do it differently. I'm not going to look for all the answers outside and ask everybody. I'm just going to, and it sounds really cheesy, but it's true, open my heart. And I asked for guidance. And how do you open your heart, right? Like, how do you practically try to open your heart? You start doing things you love. When you start doing things you love, it opens your heart. You start to feel more like yourself. You start to feel more grounded. And that looks different for everybody. But for me, oh, yeah, this is a really pretty picture of the inside and the seasons that we're going through on the inside. You're going to see this a lot, so get used to it. But for me, that looked like, well, faith. That's a huge part of my life. It's what grounds me. It's my anchor. It also looks like family. My brother, his wife, my little nephew, who's about a year old now. They're cute. My parents, my fur babies, or I should say my furless babies. If you're ever on my social media, like, this is what, you just see them. That's it. It also looks like my friends, right? My beautiful friends, some of whom are in the audience right now. These people ground me. They help me feel like myself. And it's also things that I love to do. I like to paint, and I started to do more painting again. It doesn't matter if you're good or bad at it, but you just release that creativity, right? I love to read. I went to my book club. I even tried, is it Melki or Moku? Finnish people? Melku. That's right. So I joined a Milky League with my friends, and we did that. So I just started focusing more on the things that I love. And I wasn't even trying to solve the answer anymore, right? I wasn't trying to figure out what the decision was. I was just spending time with, like, me, I guess, like the real sense of me. I traveled, I went to Italy, I went to New York, I went to Austin. These are places that I love. I went to LA, I didn't really like it that much, but nevertheless, I went there. And then, over time, while I was doing all these things, and I wasn't trying to force the answer, something started to shift internally. And before, I was looking at all the things that I might lose if I took this job. And then, for some reason, I started to see all the things that I might actually gain. And I started to reflect on my behavior. I was like, oh, where have I done things that I'm actually not so proud of? Where did my ego really get in the way? And it will get in the way. So be very wary of that. And where do I still need to grow? And those were the kinds of thoughts that actually started to come. And all of that meant that I could be in seemingly the same place, but actually it would have a different outcome. And so, have you ever had a book on your shelf, and maybe it's been there for years and years and years, and then at some point you're like, oh, this book, and you pick up the book, and you read the book, and you're like, where has this been? This is exactly what I'm meant to be reading. Why wasn't this here before? Oh my gosh, I'm connecting so much with this book. It's exactly what I need, and it's because it is at that time. But the book didn't change, right? It's just been sitting there on the shelf, so you changed. And the thing about cycles is that they're all about timing. And that timing is not up to us. And a lot of the time, we try to force the timing. And it's not up to us. It's not ours to force. And the more that you try to let go of trying to force these things, the easier it is. So my no turned into a yes, same place, different me, different outcome. So remember Gladiator, Odysseus, Simba. So I said the hero's forced to leave home, right? And then he encounters all of these trials, and then he comes back and reclaims his home. But he comes back different, and that's why he's able to reclaim his home. So it seems like he's just gone in a big old circle, but really all the things that happened along the way meant that he was able to do the thing that he couldn't do the first time around. And that's really important, because so many times in these cycles we feel like we're just going back to the beginning all the time. But we're not, because the outside starts to change the inside so that we can change the outside. And that is the cycle. So like I said, when we allow all those forces to actually do the internal work, then we change. And it's when we resist all that, when we start to run into trouble and things get really hard and really painful, and probably more painful than they were designed to be. Then we stop fighting it, and when we allow all these seasons and the cycles to do their work in us, then we can actually live the life that we were meant to live. We can start to align with, our purpose, our calling, our destiny, whatever you would like to call it. And then that internal cycle, it actually starts to get more peaceful and calmer, but also stronger, so that this internal cycle starts to be the thing that dictates the outside as opposed to the other way around. So yeah, stop resisting it, I guess is the point. It doesn't really work. Find your anchor and let the cycle do the work, because it's pointless. It's like trying to fight gravity. The only place you can do that is in space. Here's my last example. So last week, a lot of this has to do with movies I've seen in the last 2 weeks. And you would think I'd talk about games, because there's also a core loop, and it's and there's progression, and you go back around. It's such a clean analogy. Alas. Anyways, last week I went to see Interstellar, the 10th anniversary. And it's still so improbable, but still so good. And it's good for many reasons, but one of the reasons it's just so good is because it tugs at those innate cycles that we have. And here the story is still the same. Who has seen Interstellar? Oh, yeah, a lot of you. If you haven't, it's a good one. But here, the cycle. So Coop loves his daughter, Murph, right? Murph has a ghost in her room that, or it seems she has a ghost in her room, that tells her the coordinates of NASA. Coop leaves Smurf, and he goes to space to try to save the world. And when he's in space, he wrestles with this decision, right? And all he actually wants is to try to go back home. And he's trying to force it. He's trying to force it to go back home, and it doesn't work. So what does he do at some point? He lets go. And in Coop's case, letting go looks like going with the flow in the form of a black hole. And then where does that lead him? It actually leads him back home, to his daughter's room, to his center, to his anchor, right? But this time, when he's back there, it's with new insight and new information, and future Coop can help past Coop and past/present Murph. And then they together end up saving the human race. And so that's how it is with us. The outside, if we let it, changes the inside so that we can change the outside. And there's this thing, like I said, about always going back to the beginning, but we're not actually at the beginning because we're in a completely different space and time with new knowledge, new understanding, and in a way, we are actually time traveling because there's this future us that gets to pull our past selves forward into a better place. And that cycle, it keeps repeating until we do, right? Until we start to break the cycle, it keeps repeating. Because when we do, it's not just for us. We're supposed to take other people with us. And so we need that anchor. Find yours. It might be your family, it might be your friends, it might be your faith, it might be your art, right? But no matter what it is, I can pretty much guarantee it's going to be something that you love. And then trust the cycle, your inner cycle, the outer cycle, and how those two work together. Don't fight it, don't resist it. Let it guide you and shape you and change you and bring you to a better place. That's it.